Family and friends, this is our distinct privilege today to be here to recognize Rodney's life and service by rendering final military honors. If everyone will please cover their heart with their right hand now for the playing of taps. Any veterans here today, even though not in uniform, please render a hand salute. Thank you.
No matter how much I need you now, heaven needed you more, 'cause heaven was needing a hero, somebody just like you, brave enough to stand up for what you believe and follow it through. When I try to make it make sense in my mind, the only conclusion I come to is a heaven was needing a hero like you. Yes, heaven was needing a hero, and that's you.
And on behalf of the President of the United States Navy and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as your husband's faithful, honorable service to his country.
Well, I have everyone here. Just bear with me for a minute. I just wanted to say a few words. It's been about a year since I ran a marathon. At the end of the marathon, they give you this medal. And the day after, I went over to Mom and Dad's house, and I handed it to Dad. And he's like, oh, it's pretty neat. And I told him it's yours. In typical dad fashion, he was like, don't be ridiculous. And I'm like, no, because you were my inspiration for doing this. They don't give medals for fighting cancer, but they should.
Yep.
Because what Dad endured in his life is more than anyone should ever have to do. But even when things were at their worst, you'd go over to the house and you could tell that he was in pain and he wasn't feeling good, and you'd ask him how he was doing, the response was always the same: I'm peachy. It didn't matter how bad things were. Even when he was in the hospital, things were always peachy. Because Dad was not one to complain. Dad was not one to give in. He was the strongest, toughest, most amazing man I knew. The greatest gift that I was ever able to give him was for Amy and I to give him a grandson who he loved and adored. Sometimes I think more than Jeff and I combined. You know, I look back and I have so many amazing memories of him. Obviously, you know, a lot of you are now aware that, you know, he served in the Navy, he served in Vietnam, and he was so proud of that. And that's why, you know, we're in the Navy today. He was the hardest working man I ever knew. Worked at Coors for 33 years. Worked every shift imaginable. There were times that he would work a month straight, 7 days a week without a day off. Always without complaining. Everyone who ever met him, I think it's safe to say, loved him. With the exception of maybe some coworkers. That was not easy to work with. He loved being up in the mountains. He loved being up in Meeker, fishing the White River. One of my favorite memories of him, he and I went camping and everyone else was staying up at Adams Lodge. He and I stayed down at Bel Air by ourselves. The last day, everyone had gone home. He wanted to do a little bit of last-minute fishing, so we found a spot by the old picnic area. You had to crawl through about half a mile of underbrush to get to the river. We got to the river, there was a log that I went out on to fish. He went downstream. I kept hooking the same fish over and over, and it kept breaking my line. The log kept getting wetter and wetter. And finally, it got so wet that I slipped and fell into the river with one arm hooked onto the log, but the current was so strong it was trying to pull me under. Like an idiot, I never let go of my fishing pole with the other hand. So I was yelling for Dad. He had just moved upstream about 30 seconds before. He came running, pulled me up out of the water onto the log, asked me if I was okay. I said I was. I was like, all right, let's get back to fishing. At the time, he was the most giving man I knew. He wasn't the type to be verbal about it. It was always through his actions. When I was in Boy Scouts, every camping trip, he knew how much I hated leaving home. So if he was able, he'd come with me. When I graduated from college and moved to Oregon, after about a week, he and Mom drove out with all my stuff. And when I moved back to Grand Junction, he flew out, and we loaded up a U-Haul, drove all the way back to Grand Junction, and then he helped me find a place to live. It was just in his nature to be giving. Anytime anyone was sick, he was the first person to be there. My great-grandmother, my cousin, he never wanted to leave their side. My cousin Mike, he was there every single night.
And he was battling cancer.
And as hard as this whole ordeal was, the one thing that I'm most grateful about for the first time in decades, he's at peace. He's not suffering. He's up there right now. He's with Grandpa and Reggie, Mike, Gunner, Ray, Janie, Carol. He's with all of them. And he's looking down right now. And I know he's smiling because this is the gathering he wanted. He wanted people here to celebrate him, to honor him, and by all means to have as much beer as possible. So thank you all for coming. Please enjoy yourselves. Share memories of him every chance you get. Raise the Coors Light to the sky. I love you.
If there's anything Rod loved, it was a good meal and a Coors Light. So there is a ridiculous amount of food inside of the kitchen. Please help yourselves. And yes, we want everyone to have a good time, and we know that's what Rod would want too.